time. So check that out. I do want to start by saying, I know I'm talking a lot here, Andrea, but I do want to start by saying as well that if you are not a MedCircle member, this month only, MedCircle is giving an entire month of MedCircle to anybody who wants it for free. There's no cost, no risk. So you can access our entire video streaming library, which includes multiple series with Andrea Arlington focused around addiction, both as somebody who is truly an expert in that space, but also has been there herself and has helped navigate that for her family and other families. You get access to those series and more, plus you get access to live classes. That offer expires on May 31st at midnight. So make sure you go and claim that offer now at watch.medcircle.com. Now that all housekeeping is all the way, Andrea Arlington, thank you for being here today. I asked this question with all sincerity. How are you?
I am well. I'm so good. And I'm so happy to be here, Kyle. And I think it's fantastic that MedCircle is offering the month for free, because I know so many people who actually do have memberships with MedCircle, who jump on calls with me on a regular basis and talk so highly of all of the experts that you have on. So
excellent.
I'm so excited. Yeah.
Well, we will certainly be discussing some free resources that you have available personally towards the end of this video. So check out the links below or fast forward. But for now, Andrea, when it comes to navigating a family who have multiple members struggling with a variety of mental health conditions, it feels overwhelming. You don't know if you should work on you, your child, both, there's too many things to digest. What do you say to somebody who comes to you in that scenario?
Well, to begin with, I highly recommend that we practice compassion. That's sort of the unifying force, that with unconditional love. And it's hard, obviously, to have either one without the other. And what I mean by that, and how we get there to that unconditional love and compassion, is we begin to look for the unmet emotional needs that are driving the behavior. That is truly one of the most important things we can do, not just for our loved one who's struggling with the mental health and the, potentially substance use disorder, but for ourselves as well. We ourselves are not experts, obviously, in how to deal with mental health issues or a substance use disorder, but beyond that, I don't think there's one person on this planet, Kyle, who could not look at their family of origin or their early childhood. I mean, maybe there's a handful, but who could not identify that on some level they are still living in reaction to some of their basic needs for emotional security and a sense of value, a sense of deep and profound belonging in their family of origin, and a sense of connection. For instance, when I was growing up, I had the experience of having a father that was really, he just worked 7 days a week. My mother was somebody who was emotionally fragile. And, the combination of the two sort of left me feeling like I wasn't important. I didn't have value. My dad would come home and he would go straight to the bedroom office and, put his stuff down and start working right after dinner. And that was his way of protecting the family. And he was living probably in reaction to his own unmet need for feeling safe financially, right? Because he grew up at a time and in a family where no one had a college or university education, and they were really struggling financially. So, he was driven probably by this unmet need to feel financially secure and provide for his family. But in the midst of that, being a little person and not having that kind of yummy connection with my father that I saw some of my girlfriends having, left me feeling like I wasn't valuable and I didn't feel like I belonged in his heart. And so I grew up feeling like I wasn't valuable. Somehow I was flawed because I didn't have that kind of emotional connection with my dad. And that led to all sorts of bad choices on my part that, that drove me almost my entire life through 3 marriages, and through parenting my daughters after having left home at 14, because I had such a sense of lack of value in my family of origin that I wanted to be more valued. And where did I find that? With peers that were older than me and that were using drugs and that were also probably filling that void, those unmet emotional needs. So when we can start to look at ourselves and all of the choices that we made, with a sense of compassion, and start to unpack, how did I form these belief systems that I was flawed, and how did my loved one form the belief system that they're flawed? That's when we can really start to have compassion with each other and develop a sense of unconditional love.
Really eloquently said. One of my favorite series on MedCircle is the one on attachment theory, because it really backs up a lot of what you were talking about with, decades of just studies and, correlations between how we are raised and the relationships we had with our caregivers or our parents, and how those same top notes of those relationships we find ourselves in when we are seeking out a romantic relationship as an adult, and even sometimes in non-romantic relationships as well. It's really that secure attachment style that we're looking for, but a lot of us, whether we know it or not, fall into that insecure type of attachment. When you start to get educated on that, man, you really start to see yourself like, we're always looking at our life like this, I feel like. And when you start to get educated on these concepts that you brought up, then it's like you got to go in a drone and look at your life out here and go, oh, I saw what I was doing back there and why I was doing it. And then I'm like, okay, I better not do that anymore. I'm going to go this direction. It's like a roadmap a little bit. And you provide a lot of that direction and roadmap just through your advocacy work. Now, oh, go ahead, Andrea. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that, it's great when you can become aware of it, right? I remember when my son-in-law said to me, you're the one who needs help, Andrea, even though I had 2 daughters that had struggled with IV heroin use, and my brother was, somebody who passed away because of IV drug use and so forth. But, and then my husband struggled with use disorders, and so did I. But I always thought it was somebody else's problem, right? We're talking about toxic relationships, right? But so, what I'm really focused on in the work that I do is teaching people how to think differently about their past and each other's. And we talked about that a second ago, in terms of looking at the unmet needs. But once you identify what those unmet needs are, then we start using language differently. Our language forms belief systems, and reinforces belief systems, and causes other people to have belief systems reinforced about their self-value and whether they're flawed or not, whether they belong to us in our hearts or not, whether they feel safe with us. So once we identify that, we're all being driven by these unmet emotional needs, then we can start to change our language. And I think that that's one of the greatest gifts that came into my life experience, was working with a cognitive behavioral therapist, somebody who was specialized also in DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, and working with a very compassionate life coach who worked with family systems. And we just really unpacked, what is the language we're using, and how do we communicate with each other in a way that feels loving and kind and supportive and compassionate.
Okay, but go into that even further. What is the language that we're using today that maybe is unhealthy? And what type of language did you start using when you got this education?
Okay, so the language that we're using right now includes all sorts of labeling, and also sort of the critical parent voice. You should know better. How dare you? How could you do that? Don't you know how much I love you? If you really loved me, right? And so there's a lot of youing going on. There's a lot of shoulding going on. There's a lot of shaming going on. People are trying to use shame to control and to manipulate another person's feelings so that they feel obligated to change. But that's never, ever going to be a consistent change if it works at all. And most often it creates polarization, right? So that's part of it. And then the other part of it is, okay, so there's the labeling, there's the shoulding, there's that critical parent voice. Oh, okay. So if we really want to develop connection, and when we have this trusting heart-to-heart connection, that's when we have influence with each other, and we can feel like we're on the same team, side by side, looking at the world together, side by side, going, this doesn't feel good to me. How does it feel to you? What do you think we could do together to make it better? And one of the first things we can do to create that connection is use every single opportunity that we have, where we're face to face or even through text or email, to begin an interaction with somebody by saying, I'm so glad to hear your voice today. I'm so happy to see your face today. So grateful for your call today. You made my day. And acknowledgement. I just really want to acknowledge you for, calling me today, because I know last week we had a falling out, for instance, right? I want to acknowledge you for all the effort you make on a daily basis to, provide for our family, or whatever it is. Just begin every dialogue you can authentically, right? And it might mean that you sit down and you make a list of all of the things that you do appreciate, because we tend to get more of whatever we focus on with our loved ones. And so if we spend time every day, more time every day, or at least 5 minutes a day, let's start there, focused on what it is that we really appreciate with each other, we are going to create a connection with them that feels really so much better. But most of us get caught into these patterns of what we don't like about each other, and that creates toxicity in relationships.
Yeah. What is the most toxic relationship you've ever had?
Whoa. The one with myself?
you know what? I was asking myself the same question, and that was my answer. I treat, not so much anymore, but in the past, historically, I will treat other people better than I treat myself. When they come to me and say, oh, I feel like this, I go, Mike, what are you talking about? You're great. Look at all the evidence. Mm-hmm. And then they go, well, I'm never going to find anybody who I'll get in a romantic relationship with. I'm like, oh my God, you're such a catch. Like, look at how great you're. Yeah. And then when I have these same thoughts to me, I don't stick up for myself. I go, wow, you're going to be alone forever. You are not smart enough to run MedCircle. Whatever my talk is. I just think it, that is a toxic. If I had a friend telling me all this, I'd cut him out, but I don't adjust it with myself.
Exactly. And one way we can identify and look at why do we have these thoughts in our head, and what are those thoughts, right? Is we can just look at our lives, because our lives kind of mirror to us what our belief systems are. So if we're struggling financially, if we're struggling in relationships romantically or with our kids or whatever, that's a mirror for us to actually go stand in front of the mirror and have a conversation with ourselves that sounds something like, hey, you've been struggling financially for a long time. What do you think are the belief systems that are holding you from being able to have a better demonstration financially in your life? I mean, look, there are a percentage of people who work a few hours and make a lot of money. And there are a lot of people who work so many hours and make very little money. The main difference between those people is the belief system that they have about money and about their value. So we have to sort of unpack for ourselves and reparent our belief systems, reparent ourselves in a way by looking at our belief systems and deciding, is that really true about me, that just because, I'm using myself as an example, I don't have a college education yet, or I didn't even barely finish high school, right? But I have had an incredible life full of lessons and gotten certified in thousands of hours worth of stuff, right? But the bottom line is that for many years of my life, I didn't feel I had any value other than what I did professionally and as an early young adult, and that was modeling, right? Being on camera. That was an easy, I can make money doing that. But in terms of my intellectual abilities and so forth, I didn't believe in myself. But I had to unpack that. Like, where did that belief come from? Well, it came from my family of origin primarily. My grandmothers, encouraged me to be attractive and to marry a wealthy man so that I would be taken care of. And boy, I'll tell you, that didn't turn out very well for me. My dad told me that if I didn't have a college education, that I would have to marry a wealthy man, or I wouldn't be able to survive financially in the world. And their intention was to protect me, right? But it came from their own limited belief system. But it freaking stuck with me my entire life until
you believe that. You believe that, of course. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so then you have to look at what your beliefs are and ask yourself, is that really true? And the truth is, most of the time it's not. And if it's not true, then according to one of my favorite books, which is called Practicing the Presence, it's a lie. And if it's a lie and I continue to live that lie as a belief system, that makes me a liar to myself. That makes me a liar to myself. Like, do I want to be a liar? No, I don't want to be a liar. And I don't want to live that lie. And that belief system didn't even come from me. It doesn't belong to me. But until we unpack that and really get down to the root cause of those belief systems, and then tell ourselves a greater truth about who we are, life doesn't change. We have to start with evaluating the unmet emotional needs we have, the belief systems we developed as little people, which continue to drive us, and then be mentored, coached, therapized, if you will, whatever it takes, right? Find people that you want what they have. Yeah. Find somebody that has what you want, and beg, plead to work with them, because that's what changed my life. Yeah.
I just got a lot of big brain shifts from that personally, Andrea, because one of my hallmark, I'm a big proponent of a value card sword, which is an activity Dr. Judy and I have talked a lot about on MedCircle, but essentially it's determining what your values are. And my number one value is honesty and transparency. But when you just called me out by mirroring this, that I could see myself in this, is if I'm believing these lies, then I am lying to myself. And that means I am not delivering to me what I know is most important, what I expect everybody to come with. I expect everybody at MedCircle to be honest with me. I expect all my friends to be, and they all know this. I go, do not sugarcoat it. I need honesty. I need bluntness. I need transparency. I need to know the truth. I want to know the truth. And then in the same breath, I will turn around and lie to myself. I work in mental health. What's blinding me from seeing that? I saw it just now, but I've been with MedCircle for 3 years. Right. This is a journey. I get this as a journey, but what did I miss? What was that piece, do you think, that made me not see that until just this moment?
Well, I just think that so many of us are unconsciously driven by the belief systems about ourselves that don't even, they're not true, but we formed them because when we're children, we really don't have access to the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive decision-making, objective thinking area of the brain. We're driven by the amygdala, which is the fight, flight, freeze area of the brain, and which is what develops first, really, which keeps us safe as little people. But when things are happening in our environment, we, as children, we take them at face value. If daddy doesn't pick me up and, put his briefcase down and pick me up and swirl me around in circles and kiss me and tell me how much he missed me every day when he comes home from work, then obviously he hates me. I'm not worthy. I'm flawed. I don't have any value. And that's not a logical, verbal belief system that we develop, right? It's a feeling that we have inside. And right. And there's a big difference. And that's why when you have children, when I had children, and with my grandchildren today, working with a child play therapist is so important, because kids kids cannot verbally express themselves in a way that we can understand what their unmet needs are or what their belief systems are. But when you get them playing in a sandbox with hundreds of figurines that they can choose from, and how deep do they dig and how high do they build and who do they put together with who, it tells the trained therapist so much about what's going on for these little people. And so in your case, Kyle, I mean, and in all of our cases, obviously, as little people, we form these beliefs and they go unexamined. They're feelings, right? Our beliefs contribute to our thoughts and feelings, and our thoughts and feelings, cause us to take action, which gives us the results we're getting in our lives. So if we don't like the results, we kind of got to go backwards and unpack it, figure out where it came from, see if it's real, if it's true. And if it's not, let's go for making a greater choice for ourselves, and let's be real and know a greater truth.
I love that phrase, a greater choice.
Yeah, right. Greater truth, greater choice.
What are you about to say?
I was just going to say, and so, when you first asked me to do this conversation on toxic relationships, we also get to do the same thing for the people that we love and care about, but have come to maybe think of them as toxic. They're not toxic. They're dealing with the same misconceptions about their value and their self-worth, and they feel flawed and so on and so forth. So our job, if we really love each other, is to love each other up, right?
Yeah.
And to know a greater truth about each other as well. Even in the midst of somebody's outburst or psychotic break or the substance use disorder, boy, I'll tell you, if we can learn to see them through the eyes of pure unconditional love and with compassion, people tend to live up to our vision of them. And they also tend to live down to it. So it's we play such a crucial role in the way our loved ones perceive themselves. And, I was doing one of your support circles yesterday, and we had this conversation, and we were talking about how, what were we talking about? Something about how we perceive other people, and how I lost it. Never mind.
You know what? That happens to me about 20 times a day. But you did mention something that most people do not know, and that is MedCircle's newest offering for MedCircle members. And while it is still in a pilot production, so to speak, support circles will be MedCircle's take on virtual support groups. It will be intimate settings, time limited over I think a 2-month period of time. But what these support circles we're already seeing anecdotally is that not only are you getting really engaged, educated members in one area consistently, and then you have someone like Andrea facilitating this in a very compassionate way. I mean, for a lot of people, this is the only time, and for who knows how long, it may be the first time they have felt heard, they have been seen, they have felt like, man, I have a stage, I have a platform, I can share and feel supported and not ridiculed. And when you combine that with then being able to sit and listen to somebody else's experience and go, holy, so wait, I'm not the only person going through this. That is a moment that can really shift your mindset. And so I thank you for Andrea for helping us launch this. And of course, MedCircle members will get updated when these become available to all. You can, this month only, get 30 days of MedCircle for free. Some people thought we're just giving it for free for May, but you get 30 days. You just got to claim it in May. It's your 30 days whenever. So if you claim it on May 31st, you're going to get all of June for free. Okay. So that offer does expire May 31st. Go to watch.medcircle.com. To take advantage of that offer. We're going a little long, Andrea, but this is so good. So if you don't mind, could we get a couple viewer questions in?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so this viewer question is for you, obviously. It says, what if someone is so toxic for someone where they need to take space for themselves? You talked about loving somebody else, you talked about loving somebody up, but what about that person who maybe should,
Who maybe could what? who maybe is too
well,
toxic.
someone who's just so
Hard-
toxic, I
Right.
can't love you up. I got to go in my room and shut the door and take a couple deep breaths because you are just a lot right now, you know?
Right, right. And that's why it's so important to have mental health support, because we cannot expect other people to respond to us in a mentally healthy way if they're not actually doing the work themselves, right? And so what we do is we beat our head up against the wall on a regular basis, trying to get somebody to engage with us in a way that we want to feel loved by them when they're not capable of that, right? And so, yeah, sometimes you might need to take a break. I teach some really great tools in these support circles, boundary setting tools, communication tools, scripts that are really compassionate, but also set boundaries to protect ourselves, to protect our hearts, right? And I know that sometimes people ask me, like in the support circles, about well, what if you're dealing with a narcissist? And that's a difficult personality to deal with. I would just say that even with a narcissist, the studies show that narcissists are typically people who had really terribly emotionally unavailable parents. Either that, or they were overly focused on in a way that made them feel like they could never really be the person that their parents told them they were. And it drives them to be hyper focused on being a perfectionist, right? And so either one does, right? Or being safe. If our emotional needs aren't met, then we're going to protect ourselves at all lengths, and nobody else is going to be able to get a word in edgewise or change our mind about a situation. That's sort of the narcissistic, some of the traits that we deal with. But when we can really understand that it is totally driven by the experience that they had, the beliefs that they formed as little children, the emotional experience that they embodied, and it's still driving them. Just being able to understand that allows us to have more compassion. It doesn't mean that it makes it easy to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But I think that just understanding that that's what's driving it helps us practice more compassion. And when we are approaching people compassionately, they tend to drop their weapons a little bit, and so do we.
Yeah, and just to play devil's advocate, that does not mean that every relationship is worth fighting for and saving. There are plenty of relationships where, we've all been there. How long of us have stayed in a relationship longer than we should have? I think like every single person on the planet.
Right.
And so there are times where cutting ties, like getting out, is a healthier choice. But still, understanding the compassionate part is really the thing that you get to take with you to your next relationship,
Exactly. How about, consciously uncoupling, right?
Yes.
Acknowledging each other for the growth or the blessings and the challenges, and gracefully saying, I understand that you have very strong feelings about, the things that you do. And that's one of the reasons why I can no longer be in this relationship. If you ever do decide that this is something you want to work on, let's do it in a therapist office before we try to re-engage in this relationship.
Yeah, I could talk to you forever, but for time's sake, I'm going to end it with this question, Andrea. We've talked today in this video about toxic relationships, but describe to me what you believe is the opposite of a toxic relationship.
Wow. The opposite of a toxic relationship is a deep and profound sense of love and belonging with each other in a way that, we make the other person in the relationship equally as important. And we really know in our hearts that when we love that person up, it just makes the whole relationship grow and expand and blossom in just beautiful ways.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Andrea offers an incredible free resource. We'll include links below that in this video. below this video. Y'all, it is Friday of Mental Health Month, and I'm tired, so I'm not talking too good right now. Andrea has a great free resource. We will include links below this video. Andrea, would you mind sharing what that resource is to our viewers?
Oh, yes. Every Tuesday evening at 5:30 Pacific Standard Time, I offer a free and open to the public family recovery meeting. And we do about 60 minutes, and it's a great way to get support and love from other people who are going through what you're going through, but also it'll allow me to help coach you with the specific things that are going on in your life as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I love learning from you. I love listening to you. And I thank you for sharing your insight with all of our MedCircle viewers and MedCircle members. If you're a viewer on YouTube, thanks for being here. Like and subscribe for more weekly mental health content. If you are not a MedCircle member, but you would like to try it out, this is the best time to do it. You get a full month for free. Go to watch.medcircle.com. Most importantly, remember, everyone, whatever you're going through, you got this. Thanks, Andrea. Really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kyle. You too.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good one. Bye.